The lights dimmed at Market Square Arena in Indianapolis on June 26, 1977. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, stumbled across the stage, his white jumpsuit drenched in sweat, his voice barely a whisper of its former power. What the 18,000 screaming fans didn't know was that they were witnessing the beginning of the end, the final, tragic chapter of a legend whose body and spirit were crumbling under the weight of fame, addiction, and years of relentless performance. In just 2 months, the world would lose its king forever. By the summer of 1977, Elvis Presley was a shadow of the charismatic performer who had revolutionized music 2 decades earlier. At 42, his once lean frame had ballooned to over 250 pounds. His face was puffy from prescription drug abuse, and his legendary stamina had evaporated like morning mist. The man who once gyrated with explosive energy now struggled to move across the stage, often gripping the microphone stand for support. The warning signs had been accumulating for months. During his February 1977 tour, Elvis had collapsed in his dressing room after a show in Charlotte, North Carolina. His inner circle, known as the Memphis Mafia, watched in horror as their leader gasped for breath, his body racked with tremors. Dr. George Nicopolis, Elvis's personal physician, administered emergency treatment, but the incident was hushed up, dismissed as exhaustion. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manipulative manager, refused to acknowledge the severity of his client's condition. The show must go on, Parker insisted, and the money must keep flowing. Parker had his own financial demons gambling, debts that required Elvis to maintain a grueling performance schedule despite his deteriorating health. The Colonel's callous indifference to Elvis's well-being would prove to be a death sentence, disguised as business as usual. Those closest to Elvis watched helplessly as he spiraled deeper into pharmaceutical dependence. His consumption of prescription drugs, uppers to get through performances, downers to sleep, painkillers to numb both physical and emotional agony, had reached catastrophic levels. He would consume handfuls of pills like candy, washing them down with cola or milk, his judgment clouded by the very substances he believed were keeping him functional. The tragedy wasn't just physical, it was profoundly emotional. Elvis had become a prisoner of his own fame, trapped in a gilded cage of endless touring and public expectations. He spoke frequently of wanting to retire, to find peace, but the financial pressures and his own complex relationship with performing made escape seem impossible. The stage that had once been his kingdom had become his purgatory. The June 1977 tour began with ominous portents. Elvis arrived in Springfield, Illinois, for the opening show on June 17th, looking haggard and disoriented. Band members later recalled that he seemed to be moving through a fog, his speech slurred, his coordination severely impaired. During rehearsals, he would forget lyrics to songs he had performed thousands of times, staring blankly at the audience as if trying to remember where he was. The Springfield performance was a disaster thinly veiled as entertainment. Elvis's voice cracked repeatedly, he forgot song lyrics, and at one point he nearly fell while attempting his signature moves. The audience, initially excited to see their idol, grew increasingly uncomfortable as the show progressed. Some fans later described feeling like voyeurs at a private tragedy, watching a great man's public humiliation. By the time the tour reached Omaha, Nebraska, on June 19th, Elvis's condition had worsened dramatically. During My Way, ironically, prophetic given the circumstances, he began crying on stage, tears streaming down his cheeks as he struggled through the lyrics. The emotional breakdown was caught on bootleg recordings that would later circulate among collectors, serving as haunting testimony to his mental state. The most alarming incident occurred in Rapid City, South Dakota, on June 21st. Midway through Unchained Melody, Elvis suddenly stopped singing and gripped the piano for support. For nearly 30 seconds, an eternity in performance time, he stood silent, swaying slightly, his eyes unfocused. The band continued playing, uncertain whether to stop or carry on. Finally, Elvis shook his head as if awakening from a trance, and resumed singing, but his voice was barely audible. Behind the scenes, panic was setting in among his entourage. Red West, one of his oldest friends and bodyguards, later revealed that they had discussions about canceling the remainder of the tour. However, Colonel Parker's iron grip on Elvis's career decisions meant that such conversations never reached the performer himself. The machine had to keep rolling, regardless of the human cost. Dr. Nicopolis increased Elvis's medication regimen, believing that the right combination of drugs could stabilize his condition long enough to complete the tour. This decision, made with the best of intentions, actually accelerated Elvis's decline. The pharmaceutical cocktail was becoming increasingly toxic, affecting not just his physical coordination, but his mental clarity and emotional stability. June 26, 1977, Indianapolis. Market Square Arena. 18,000 fans packed into the venue, unaware they were about to witness one of the most shocking moments in rock and roll history. Elvis took the stage wearing his white rainfall jumpsuit, the rhinestones catching the lights, but failing to mask his obvious distress. From the opening notes of C.C. Rider, it was clear that something was terribly wrong. His movements were sluggish, his voice weak and occasionally inaudible. During Hurt, Johnny Cash's haunting ballad that Elvis had made his own, he seemed to be singing his own obituary. The lyrics took on prophetic meaning as he struggled through lines about pain and regret. Halfway through the song, Elvis suddenly stopped, placed his hand on his chest, and began swaying dangerously. Then it happened. During "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" Elvis's legs buckled. He dropped to one knee, then collapsed completely, his massive frame hitting the stage with a sound that silenced the arena. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the king of rock and roll lay motionless on the stage floor, his white jumpsuit stark against the dark platform. The audience reaction was immediate and visceral. Screams pierced the air as fans realized they weren't witnessing a planned dramatic moment, but a genuine medical emergency. Security guards rushed the stage while band members stood frozen, uncertain how to respond. Charlie Hodge, Elvis's longtime friend and stage companion, was the first to reach him. Kneeling beside the fallen icon and calling his name, Dr. Nicopolis, who always traveled with Elvis, appeared within minutes. He quickly assessed the situation. Elvis was conscious but disoriented, his pulse rapid and irregular. The decision was made to help him to his feet and get him off stage immediately. With assistance from his bodyguards, Elvis was half carried, half walked to the wings, leaving behind an arena full of shocked and confused fans. The official explanation given to the audience was exhaustion, a convenient euphemism that had been used to cover Elvis's health issues for months. The show was canceled, refunds were promised, and within hours, Elvis was on his private jet back to Memphis. But the damage was done. Word of the collapse spread quickly through the music industry and fan community, sparking rumors and speculation about the true state of Elvis's health. The Indianapolis collapse should have been a wake-up call, a moment of reckoning that forced everyone around Elvis to confront the reality of his condition. Instead, it became just another incident to be managed, another crisis to be spun into acceptable public relations. Colonel Parker immediately went into damage control mode, issuing statements about Elvis's need for rest while simultaneously booking more shows for later in the year. Elvis returned to Graceland in a state of profound depression and physical exhaustion. Those who saw him during these final weeks described a man who seemed to be disappearing before their eyes. His weight fluctuated wildly as he alternated between periods of not eating at all and binge-eating sessions that would last for hours. His sleep patterns were completely disrupted. He would stay awake for days, then sleep for 15 to 20 hours straight. The prescription drug consumption reached levels that defied medical explanation. Elvis would take dozens of pills daily, mixing uppers and downers in combinations that should have killed him outright. His tolerance had built up over years of abuse, but his body was finally reaching its breaking point. Friends later reported finding him passed out in various rooms of Graceland, sometimes for hours at a time. On August 16, 1977, less than 2 months after the Indianapolis collapse, Elvis Presley was found dead in the bathroom at Graceland. He was 42 years old. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrhythmia, but the toxicology report revealed a pharmaceutical cocktail that included codeine, morphine, Quaaludes, Valium, Vomid, Placidil, and several other prescription drugs. The world mourned the loss of the king, but for those who had witnessed his final performances, his death was not shocking. It was inevitable. The man who had given everything to his art and his fans had finally given his life. The collapse in Indianapolis had been a preview of the final curtain, a tragic foreshadowing of what was to come. Elvis's death marked the end of an era, but his music and legacy continued to inspire new generations. However, his final months serve as a cautionary tale about the destructive power of fame, the dangers of prescription drug abuse, and the tragic consequences of enabling someone's worst impulses in the name of business or loyalty. Elvis Presley's final concert days remind us that behind every legend lies a human being, vulnerable to the same frailties that affect us all. His collapse on stage was more than just a medical incident. It was the visible manifestation of years of neglect, abuse, and the crushing weight of expectations. Ready to explore more untold stories of music legends? Subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive content about the hidden truths behind your favorite artist's most dramatic moments. Don't let these incredible stories fade into history. Join thousands of music lovers who crave the real story behind the headlines.